things first. We have the minutes from June 17th. Are there any revisions or additions? Not, entertain a motion to approve.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 17th as they were presented.
I have a motion from Nancy.
I'll second.
I have a second from Kevin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I'm going to switch the agenda just a little bit because of people we have here that really need to come forward and present. We have Vince Lukey is with St. Benedict Brewery. I think you received the information regarding the agreement that I think Renee is going to give a little update on the agreement, but it might ask, this is a requirement that's part of the state approval process for his license on the riverfront. So, Ms. Lee, would you mind telling us a little bit about, I think, to bring the council up to what your plans are with the riverfront?
Has a copy of the inside of
We have.
the layout, okay. So,
The layout?
right, and I can answer any questions on the layout, but it's basically a simple brewery tap room where we will serve.
Put your line on there. On the
microphone.
There we go.
Basically, it's going to be a kind of a standard brewery tap room in which we will serve the beers that we make at Ferdinand. We could have some guest taps, but the majority of them, most of the time, will be our beers. So menu will be pizza. We'll do some German-style sandwiches and appetizers, but it won't be a full kitchen. But we will serve pizza. As you can see, we'll have kind of a sliding outside window where we could do pizza sales after hours, but inside will be approximately 45 to 50 seats. So the all family seating, except right around the bar itself, will be 21 and over. So a family establishment, but we will serve beer. We are going to apply for a 3-way license. We plan to have wine, but as of now, we don't plan to have hard liquor, even though we would have that option down the road. But it's just easier now to apply for a 3-way license.
So currently, you're just looking at beer and wine.
My question on this, as we read through this ordinance, will this then allow people or patrons at the River Center Plaza or Platts to go into Mr. Lukey's on a hot day and enjoy a beverage and be able to walk out of the facility and be on their patio area or down in the riverfront area, or do we have to do that as a separate district?
So that's not our decision. That is all based on the license itself.
Okay.
Currently, because of COVID, the governor passed an executive order that does affect that and does allow some of that.
Sure.
I did tell Mr. Lukey that he should get in touch with the local excise contact who we have a very good relationship with as well.
Sure.
And ensure that he understands what he can do now and what he can do or will be able to do once that executive order goes away. Because it's my understanding that once the executive order goes away, it's on site, so it's not.
Well, he definitely would want to apply for it, right? I mean, to be able to carry it out into that.
That's not.
It's our
It's not really an option. I mean, this riverfront license is designed specifically to allow on-premise sales by him at that location. Can't go to anyone else. He can't take it anywhere else. It's right there.
My question for that was again, many years ago, walking with the downtown riverfront master plan, when we had bands come through that the chamber sponsors or tourism sponsors down in that area, if people were able to walk up, grab something and go
And I think
down there. But this is well, understanding it's different other side of the bridge. But
Maybe explain to the new council members about this particular license that's
Different than another license.
Okay, sure. So we did, 2017, we passed a resolution that established the Jasper Patoka Riverfront District, and that is a district where this type of license is allowed. And it is only allowed to businesses in this district, and if a business becomes a holder of one of those licenses, as I said, it is very specific. It is only for the place that they've included in their application, and it is only for that person, so they cannot sell it. If Mr. Lukey would discontinue his business at that specific location, then the license goes away, and a new person would have to reapply, or he would have to reapply at a new location. It does not apply against the quotas that are in Du Bois County, so that's the benefit
It's different.
of having this district. It's really designed for economic development purposes. And it is automatically a three-way application. It doesn't have to use it,
He
but
doesn't want to use it, that's
that's
right.
what it is.
And to refresh my memory, wasn't that something passed at the state level? It had to be something to do with rivers and your distance from a river, kind of like that, yeah.
This the first application for our river district?
Yes.
Okay.
It's kind of my plan. The only outdoor seating would be perhaps in front of the business on the driver's license, the city sidewalk, so we'd have to work with the city there and right behind the business, but I think we would have to have kind of portable stanchions, just a black,
And that was my question, to not have to necessarily fence your patrons in. If somebody came in, if they're staying at the hotel and want to go out and sit on, eventually, as we build forward, the stairs down to the river or the nice patio area that'll be coming behind, if they're okay to walk out with this particular license, or would we have to do something completely separate there? Okay.
Now, Mr. Lukey did talk about the possibility of having special events.
Sure.
In that case, then I think you said he would
we
apply for.
would have to apply for a special festival license for
Okay.
just that day or two.
Okay.
Which would set up a footprint of where we would do that. So the only carry out I think we will be able to do would be to filter hours. That would be basically it, so we wouldn't
Okay.
sell any other carry out.
Okay.
And when someone does with that growler, that's then beyond your,
True.
take it to that
Yeah.
patio.
So
Sure,
someone
sure.
could, once they buy that growler, unless the city has a restriction on them carrying it out to a public area, that would be between.
No, that'd be helpful.
I think this is an important step for us in a number of ways. First, it's the first riverfront license or river district license we're issuing. But even more important, the River Center, bringing in a combined beverage and restaurant into that location, I think it's critical for the success of that business and the progression of it. And I think, Mr. Lukey has had success in St. Benedict's and in Ferdinand, and expanded to the Rockport, has a satellite there now. So this becomes his third facility. He's growing his business well, and I really welcome him to Jasper. And the fact that
Look forward to it. So,
this could be a great thing for us.
great.
Do you want to talk about the agreement, maybe?
Well,
Question, do you plan on only doing like craft beers or doing any regular beers?
We would have the option to do a guest tap.
I
So
mean, just like a Budweiser.
probably not. We make light beers that are even better than Bud Light, so. But if, let's just say, for example, we had a production issue at Ferdinand, I mean, we wouldn't have to run our taps dry. We could purchase, guest taps even from other breweries as well, but.
and then your hours, you said 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and then 10 to 11, and maybe later in the summer. I can't remember, what is the allowable hours to be open? Is it 2 or 3 a.m. yet? Is that still
I think so.
something like that?
Yeah, we're not going to be that late of a.
You're not looking.
Establishment. Still, I think it was. And again, for those people, I mean, most people are familiar with craft breweries, but they draw people mainly for the beer. So it's, as we told the sisters 5 years ago, we we haven't had our first bar fight or,
Yeah.
know us, people aren't passed out in the bushes the next morning, so it's.
And I don't anticipate that.
No, so, I mean,
It'll be a little bit different here at your place in Jasper than you have it at Ferdinand.
it will be, just our location next to the hotel and downtown, so, yeah. But, it's part of our servers, it's their responsibility not to overserve people, so that responsibility kind of falls on us as well.
So if you let them go outside of the sidewalk, for example, is that going to be fenced in, or is that?
I think if ATC allows us to do that, whether the front or the back, we would have to have those portable, black, not like theater ropes, but it's basically just a vinyl strap that they would have to stay within those confines. And we would just be basically thinking of 3 or 4 kind of not bar stools or higher chairs sitting around a, moderate size. So it wouldn't be super extensive outdoor seating, just in nice weather, give people an outdoor option.
So his attendance is also tied with ordinance number 2020-17.
Right. So, ordinance number 2020-17 establishes the requirement of having a holder of a permit or entering into a commitment with the city. And that is a state requirement. That's not something that we would have necessarily required locally, but now it's a state requirement. So, Mr. Lukey will have to include this ordinance if it's passed in his application to the state, as well as a copy of a commitment that we've drafted. The commitment, for all intents and purposes, goes back to our guidelines and our requirements in our application. So basically, it just says, this is a commitment that you will adhere to all of our local zoning and other requirements, as well as complying with all the promises that you made in your application. It doesn't have any separate requirements in the commitment agreement itself. So what I would like for the council to do is to consider ordinance number 2020-17, which will establish the commitment requirement so that we're compliant with Indiana code. And then you can consider a recommendation for Mr. Lukey's application. If you give him a favorable recommendation, then the mayor's office will draft a letter that Mr. Lukey will include with his application to the ATC.
Okay.
Questions?
So the first thing would be to ask for a motion to consider the ordinance for one reading only. This is ordinance number 2020-17.
I'll make a motion to read the ordinance 2020-17 for one reading only.
A motion from Nancy. I have a second from Paul. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Could I ask for a motion to have the ordinance read in full or by title only?
Make a motion, we read it by title only.
Motion from Chad, title only.
I'll second.
Second from Phil. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The city attorney, please read ordinance number 2020-17 by title only.
Ordinance number 2020-17, an ordinance regarding eligibility and commitments for certain economic development alcoholic beverage permits.
Could I have a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 2020-17?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Kevin.
Second.
Hopefully we get to see several more of these applications come and fill in that area and keep it going, so.
How long does it take to get a permit?
We would have forwarded this by the end of the make sure it's clear and schedules that local county ATC meeting, which is held next week. So I can't remember which week of the month is on the schedule. So hopefully we're
and ready for pizza and beer.
Next time.
Take that as an approval.
If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Vince.
So now, we motion for a favorable recommendation.
I'll make that motion for a favorable recommendation. No, that's the name. This is
St. Benedict's.
Drew Works, Jasper, as favorable to the state.
We have a motion from Nancy.
I'll second.
We have a second from Chad. Further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, can we draft that, get that?
And hopefully they're not like delayed at the state just because of things going on, limited staffing or whatever, working from home.
Gives us the meaning to drafting an ordinance, doesn't it?
Oh, God.
Sorry.
Thank you again.
Before I leave this, I guess, Jane, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Thank you.
Regarding this? Okay.
We've come a long way.
Yeah, we have.
Finally real.
Well, I appreciate your tolerance and patience and your investment in Jasper, so thank you. Okay, so that was passed at 5:47. Okay. Next thing on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-16. It's an ordinance establishing a fund for receiving and returning rental deposits for the city facilities. It's available for one reading only procedure. May I have a motion to consider ordinance number 2020-16 for one reading only?
So moved.
Motion from John,
Second by Paul.
second by Paul. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Could I have a motion to have an ordinance read in full by title only?
I'll make a motion to read it by title only.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Nancy, and a second by Dave. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, will the city attorney please read ordinance number 2020-16 by title only?
Ordinance number 2020-16, an ordinance establishing a fund for receiving and returning rental deposits for city facilities.
Okay, do we want to, Alan, do you want to explain what this is about?
Yeah, what this is about is previously, well, you had the security.
Yeah, Alan, I'm sorry, but they're not gonna pick you up if you're sitting. If you wanna grab the microphone. I don't know if they'll pick you up if you're standing up there anyway, but still.
What this did was, a security deposit would go under, whichever was park department or general fund, it would go in there as revenue, and we paid it back if you come out as an expense. With the arts department having more of these with the new arts cultural center, I think it'd be good to get that out of that. So all it does is it gives us a separate fund to put the money into and pull it out. And that's it.
More of an in and out versus a revenue stream.
Yeah, before it doesn't want to show up as a revenue, which you don't need.
And then what happens if someone aren't eligible to get their deposit back? Then that deposit would then go into the regular, whatever revenues. I mean, what if they didn't clean up their mess?
Yeah, if they did that, then I, as the clerk treasurer, can put that in whatever fund, whoever cleaned it up, and then we go to them. All right.
That's part of the procedure.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve ordinance 2020-16 as submitted.
I'll second that.
Motion from Paul, and a second by Kevin. Any further discussion on that? Not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? ordinance 2020-15 has been moved from this agenda to go to the August meeting. I guess if you want to share any information on this.
Sure. As you know, we're working with the utility department to establish payment, credit cards as a payment option. And currently, our ordinance doesn't reflect any language that would allow that. So it says check, cash, direct deposit. So we'll be adding credit card as one of those items, but we're not quite there yet at the utilities. We need to pass a resolution by the Utility Service Board asking for that change to be made. So in August, we'll have that resolution at the Utility Service Board, and then the ordinance will come to the council in August as well.
Are there a lot of other communities accepting credit cards?
I would say yes, but truthfully, I think that we'll find, and I think the utility business office feels this way as well, that because there's going to be a convenience fee associated with it, a lot of people won't take advantage of using that because that's being passed on to the customer. I don't know, we'll see.
Where are bankers at? It also saves them the utility office time because it's directly put into their checking accounts immediately, so they don't have to post deposits and things like that too. So there is convenience for you having a credit card.
We use it for REC bill and the 2.1 bill on property that we don't have outside the city limits. We don't ever have to worry about it. It's just always the system.
Well, we do have that. People can set it up to be paid automatically currently out of their bank account. This won't affect that.
Right. It's just another option for people.
Correct.
It's another,
Renee, any idea how much that convenience fee is?
Yeah, I think there's $1.25 associated with every transaction, and then a convenience fee that cannot exceed, I think it's either $3 or $3.50.
So the fee does not cover what the credit card companies would charge us, though, their fees, correct? I mean, most of those fees are like 1.25% or something like that, or Mr. Banker, or what's the normal rate?
Yeah, it varies. Probably depends what you work out.
The answer is,
It would cover your bank fee.
yeah.
3% over covers that.
You would probably have to, state board of accounts wouldn't allow that.
We should, a municipal utility can absorb that fee. I mean, that would just be worked into our rates as a cost of doing business. But we have currently decided, at least for the time being, not to do that.
you want to stay and address the next, we have tabled the ordinance regulating animals in the city of Jasper.
So that was tabled last month. Charter has a draft, and it is just a draft. It's a start. We're actually scheduled to sit down and go through the whole draft of the public nuisance ordinance, I think later this week, and then either again later this week or next week, to sit down with the various departments, primarily code enforcement and police, and then also probably street department, to go through and make sure that we've covered everything that they see when they're out, that they're encountered with, to make sure that we haven't, well, I want to say haven't missed anything, but as soon as we get it done and passed, we'll figure out something that's going on. But at the end of the day, it's designed to make it easier for us for Kenny, for all of us to enforce our public nuisances, and by that I mean things that you guys and the public call in about all the time, not just weeds, but trash and things sitting in the yard that shouldn't be, and things sitting on the front porch that shouldn't be, and those kinds of things. Because right now we just have a very vague ordinance, and it's a little bit difficult for Kenny, not a little bit, a lot difficult for Kenny to determine, what is and what is not allowed. So That's the goal behind that. And as you know, noise is one of those items, so it will be addressed in that ordinance. So the purpose for including that draft in your package of information on Friday was just to give you kind of a feel for what types of things we're looking at. By all means, if there are things already in it that you feel need to be adjusted, or if there are things that aren't in it that you feel need to be, things that you see when you're driving around or that your constituents are calling you about, please, please, please let us know over the course of the next 30 days so that when it comes to you in August, we can have a meaningful dialogue and if not get it passed, then be close to what the final version would be.
I have a question, Renee. The current nuisance ordinance, noise nuisance ordinance, if I read it correctly, is enforced by the police department, not code enforcement. Is that correct?
We do. Kenny gets complaints about that, but for the most part, yes, it is enforced.
The draft that was sent out, is it attempting to make a shift to just code enforcement? Because I did not see where police were included in that one on the current.
The police will be included.
So that's not a shift that's intended. Okay. So it's either or.
Yes.
Okay, no action is required this evening. This is on for information. If there's any other questions you have on it tonight, otherwise, I'll move on. Thank you, Renee. The next item on the agenda is the gas contractor's license for Cade Shepherd. You should have received a copy of this. And I would entertain a motion to move forward with his contractor's license.
Does our gas department feel that 86% is acceptable? Is there any feedback from them on, I know ones we've had recently were in the high 90s, we've had some really good ones, and this was 86, and I don't know if that's acceptable, or is that high enough?
It is pursuant to our ordinance.
Okay.
So what's the limit, or how low can you
Yeah,
go?
we've had this conversation
Yeah.
before, and in fact, I
Came up with a percentage. I can't remember what that was.
We said where it was, because that wasn't where we wanted to be. We wanted to be a little bit better.
Scary enough, wasn't it 70%? If they hit 70%?
We didn't think that was
Yeah,
acceptable.
that's right.
I can't remember what that number was. Was it 80 or? That's been within the past year when we talked about that.
Is the application passed on to us if he or she has not met that threshold? Okay. But it would be nice to know what that is, though.
And from the gas department.
Tim signs off on it, so.
We'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the Mr. Cade's gas contractor's license.
I'll second that motion.
Paul. Second, Nancy. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have other business. I have one thing. Anyone else?
I have a question, just a question. Is there any deadline, like when we pass an ordinance, and I'm talking about swimming pool fences, is there any deadline when something has to be done regarding an ordinance like that? Because there's nothing being done with the ones that had complained and you know,
yeah, actually,
unless you have feedback that we don't know.
so Steve Dills has been working on that, and he's actually been in communication with everyone that was on that list. The last time we had a meeting, which was maybe 10 days ago, he had been contacted by every property owner on the list. And if their pool fence was not already installed, then they had provided him with a plan, except for two, and they were two of the newest ones. Both of the property owners had large properties and were having difficulty getting contractors in and figuring out how exactly to install the fence. So we've asked them to give, I think they wanted us to tell them what they can or can't do. And we asked them conversely to give us their plan, and we would look at their plan and let them know if it was compliant with the requirements or not. So we should, I don't know the dates that he gave them for when they need to have that plan submitted. I know they have a date, but all of those property owners have been contacted, and most of them are either now in compliance or they've submitted a plan with dates so that we know what's going on.
When someone submits an application for a pool, and then also that would include the pool fence.
That's correct.
Is there a time frame? Is it like on an application, is it a year, 2 years?
There will be, beginning in 2021.
Okay.
Because we had this issue of the ordinance and whether it was gonna pass or not and what it was gonna look like. It kind of got a little bit funky because we had so many that, and the differing dates. So beginning in 2021, when somebody applies for a pool and a fence, we determined we'll have 90 days to get the fence in.
They should probably have their contractor lined up ready before they do that.
Exactly right.
The guys that put pools in, put the fence up as well.
Yeah, and that's what they're gonna be told. In fact, we talk about changing the language on the permit application to reflect that at this time, if you are in the process of applying, you need to have contacted your fence installer if it's someone separate as well, so that they understand.
Because I know a couple companies, they're booked up to the end of next year.
The other thing that we've changed recently because of this issue is that we no longer accept an application that was signed by the contractor. It has to be signed by the property owner.
Sure.
We were finding that the property owners were not aware that there was even a fence requirement.
Oh.
So.
Makes sense.
Good enough, thank you.
Steve did a really good job of reaching out and working with the property owners to get it done. So, and we want to work with them too. We don't
Yeah.
you know, put too much of a constraint on them, especially given that there are some issues with availability of contractors and materials.
He has been able at this point to go back in time through the 2016 applications. And so I've asked them to continue, not to drop everything and make pools his priority, but as he has time to continue to work backwards in time through the applications that we have for which people applied for a fence and a pool.
Wow, from 2016, wow.
It's the problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. You all were emailed some information on the hopes of some in our community who would like to improve our current archery ordinance. A little background on that. In 1951, the city of Jasper passed an ordinance as it pertains to the use of firearms, that is, the restriction of the use of firearms in the city limits. Over the course of years, folks questioned whether or not that actually included archery or not. It was not specifically addressed in that ordinance. In 2004, at the request of the then Chief of Police Councilman, the City Council looked at the issue. At the request, at the recommendation of the Board of Public Works and Safety at that time, they passed what is now the current archery ordinance, as I would call it, the archery ordinance, which allows for the use of bows and long bows and compound bows within the city limits. It does not currently allow for the use of crossbows. There are a few other things in there that it does not allow, like the use of 3D targets. And there are some decent arguments, I would say, for allowing those things. I think safety can be improved to make the ordinance even better than its current form. But the use of crossbows is one that is really one that I'm kind of excited about the prospect, because you're potentially allowing increased opportunities for those who are otherwise unable to enjoy the sport of archery, namely those who with disabilities who might not be able to use a compound bow, or youth who could partner with an adult to use a crossbow, and that's perfect. That kind of equipment is perfect for a youth-adult pairing, because a child is not going to be able to use it, cannot launch a bolt from a crossbow. It takes considerable strength to make that crossbow effective. So if anybody has any questions of that, what the ideas are, or concerns, please direct them toward me, or any input you'd like to see in such a revised proposed ordinance.
I'm really not familiar with archery at all. I would prefer having some pictures of what some of these things look like.
Okay.
Before I
Yeah.
moving toward them.
I failed to mention, in the conclusion in 2004 was a 7-0 vote. The city council passed it unanimously to allow it. At the time, really, crossbows were not on the radar of anybody. They really weren't that popular at all. I'm not even sure that at what point they became legal for the use in deer hunting, for example, and even from the earliest moments, it was only for those with disabilities. In 2012, the DNR changed that to allow every person, if licensed to do so, to lawfully use that in their hunting. But we're talking about archery practice here. But yeah, I definitely get some pictures. That's a good idea. Thank you.
And then the
Thank you.
proposed, where the red is, that's would be changing some of these.
Yes. So
Those recommendations that you're making, or?
they would be at this point. They are. And this is through discussion with several people, no less than 5 for sure. One of them was involved in the committee originally, Kevin Shepard, who owns Great Outdoors, and he wants to do things the right way. Safety is a paramount concern to him as well. But this is what I whittled it down to, and this is not going to be the final product. I know this already. There's going to be some additional changes from what was emailed on Friday.
Chad, did you address the issue that we had in my backyard with a youth using it without, I didn't see that on there, youth without an adult present?
Okay, that specifically is not mentioned in the current ordinance, and it's not in the proposed revisions. I'm happy to entertain adding something like that. I can tell you as a catch-all, in that particular instance, it sounds to me like it would fall under recklessness, and that's a violation of the current ordinance, and it would be of the new one as well.
The only reason why they asked that is that after the incident we had grilling in the backyard, and an arrow hit my grill. So, but I had addressed it with the young boy's mother, and my fear is that she would say, I give him my consent. Mm-hmm. She would view that as, he can go ahead and shoot the bow and arrow in their backyard. Mm-hmm. So, but, I just want to make sure, I just think an adult needs to be present, not just, yes, I give you my consent, and shoot out to those dinner or whatever, and the kids out there shooting my dad's grill, so.
Being somebody that's had not a crossbow, but a regular bow before, it's very important to have your backstops, because you don't always hit the target.
I guess
I was not very good. And it's important to practice, especially with a regular bow. A crossbow, it's a little different, because it's almost like shooting a gun, because you do have a lot of scopes, so it's a lot different than a regular bow.
We happen to shoot regular bow in our backyard with other boys as well, 12, 9, and 5 goes handicap, doesn't strictly bullet yet, but he tries. But just a regular little longbow into a ground target with hay bales behind it to
And are you
to stop through.
just out of curiosity following these regulations, or did you even know they exist?
No, I know they exist, but we shoot from about 15 yards. There's no 40-yard or long-range stuff. The bow that I've got will probably would, if it would hit that wall, it would bounce off. You know.
Not put on the hook, no, just.
Yeah.
Are there any yard sign restrictions or anything like that? If it's a real small yard, they're shooting in between houses or something like that? I mean, again, I'm much like Nancy, I have no issue with it, but I just want to make sure that.
There currently is not, and
That's something that, again, I don't know that. I look at like the downtown area with some of the homes, a little bit smaller yards,
Right.
and the kids are out there, and it's not going to take much for that arrow to escape one errant shot, and that thing is into the neighbor's yard. So.
yeah.
There are other places people really can go to practice. There's archery range up at Patoka. There's archery ranges out by Beaver Lake. I mean, there's places people can go. They don't have to go through the expense of setting up a range. But I kind of get Phil's point. You know, you can have somebody just running in between while guys out there shooting. And
Yeah. That's going to be a reckless use. I mean, if you're shooting in that kind of proximity. So the way we would address that, at least currently, the thought process, we thought about size of property, but that's going to be very difficult to enforce. So the way to approach that has been recommended, just giving police and code enforcement the discretion to shut something down and saying, no, this is not what we had in mind here, and until it can be reviewed by the Board of Public Works, for example.
Common sense can dictate that.
Right,
I'm fine
right.
with that.
So even if no archery were permitted whatsoever, you're not going to stop people from doing dumb things.
Yeah.
So the only thing you would do if you didn't have this ordinance is you would keep reasonable people who are doing the right things from being able to enjoy it.
So you're also asking that it would include that you could use a crossbow in the city limits?
I would recommend it, yeah, but within, well-regulated, for sure. So one example of what that could mean is right now in what was emailed out, the suggestion of perhaps 60 yards as the distance from archer to target. It's probably a bit much. So we would probably keep that around 30 or 40. Right now, it's basically at 30 is the maximum distance. You can also look at being allowed to sling these arrows from an elevated position, which will limit the distance of travel. The ground itself, in that instance, becomes a backstop, which is required by the ordinance. That has not changed.
Actually, the current, where this reads is the current ordinance is 90 feet.
90 feet is roughly 30 yards.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was.
And I don't know where
I was thinking you said that.
It's an interesting thing because in archery they almost always use yards as a measure, but here it does say feet.
yeah, you set your pins and yards.
Yeah.
So I think this is under construction, and Chad was seeking feedback, wanted to, he's got a committee that's working on this, subcommittee that's kind of pulled together on this, and any input you'd have over the course of the next
I wouldn't say
month?
it's a committee. I'd say it's a group of interested individuals.
That's right. That's right.
My
We
main
didn't
thing
establish
is
the
just strictly for the safety of, smaller city yards and stuff like that. I don't want to prohibit the sport. I think it's, a great sport. I don't participate in it, but I have no issues with it as long as it's done safely.
And, back to your safety, you talked about the kid that shot your grill. A couple neighbor kids that get together and another kid tries it that's not even used to a bow, and you don't know where that's going to go.
Yeah. And that's not done because we have an archery ordinance. That's done because
Shouldn't be done.
kids are doing things they shouldn't be doing.
But if we did not allow it, those kids then would be told you're not allowed to do that.
You would hope. I'm of the opinion that youth violated the existing ordinance. I'm of that opinion. I would suspect Kenny or the police would have to agree with that. I mean, your grill is not a target, and there's no backstop there.
You don't know what
So what I what I'm hoping to do is ultimately be able to include a greater number of residents who otherwise cannot currently enjoy the sport under the existing ordinance. Ultimately, and improve safety. I think those things can be done.
So, again, for your information, and to get your input. We don't have a really final draft. That's something you can.
Just out of curiosity, how big of a sport is it in Jasper? I mean, I other than my grill being hit, I've never seen anybody else in the city of Jasper. I mean, do a lot of people do it in?
There's pretty robust business and
Is it?
Yeah.
compound bow sales in this area and hunters that go out for archery prior to gun season
You have target
rolling through,
practice
so.
in your backyard.
I will not in my backyard. I will not. I live in an area that just is not reasonable.
So in your backyard, this would not work.
I mean, I technically could use my garage as a backstop. That would be legal. Not reasonable.
In your garage.
It's expensive, yeah.
Well, that's where I'm kind of getting to. So you feel that your yard is maybe too close to your neighbor's yard. So there's a whole neighborhood's full of that prime example. So that's just part of my concern. I'm not in favor of this.
Yeah, what's helpful perhaps to that point is that, this is a long track record of 2004 to right now. And code enforcement and police have said they've not really had any real issues enforcing it or having major violations of it.
We want to change it.
To include a greater number of people, like someone who, so when I talk about people with disabilities, so the action in using a compound bow requires strength from here, and if they don't have that range of motion, a crossbow is simply something that you hold, much like a rifle, and the bolt sits in there, and you just squeeze a trigger. Now, it does take some strength to load it, but they even make mechanical ones that can compensate for that, for the folks who are otherwise unable to draw it. Does that make sense? Is that, I'll get some pictures.
But the correlation to pulling the trigger of a gun is what concerns me. When we do not allow the firing of firearms within the city limits. And you're kind of using that as an example of what that's, maybe similar to. It's just, I'm just exploring and just have some questions, many questions actually, as I keep reading.
It's good, that's what we want.
I encourage you to reach out to Chad with those questions.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody have anything else? I have one thing. Kevin, you had another thing?
Zoom meetings, if we're meeting like this, for this meeting, why on 8 o'clock on Friday wouldn't we meet the same way to have discussion?
Because I got all the department heads coming as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Like we did when went through the prioritization before, we had council and department heads involved.
Okay.
So,
I didn't know that.
16 on.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to include them in that because they're the ones with the projects. They were involved last year. I think the dialogue was, I think that's a good question though. Yeah, nothing replaces being in person.
Right.
And if I had my way, we'd always be in person, so. Eventually we'll have technology that will support us though, and the public. Hopefully you've heard the news today of Governor Holcomb's executive order he plans to put in place. He plans to sign it tomorrow, mandating masks across the state. And COVID-19 is escalating across the state, and that's his move. The numbers, the data is showing that it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed holistically as the state of Indiana. And I'm supporting the governor's step in that because we here in Du Bois County, I've been in multiple meetings for the last several days and over the weekend on what is our next step. We made the proclamation last Friday asking people to voluntarily wear masks and to socially distance. Our numbers are escalating. And I have here, and if you look at the screen, I don't know how many of you have seen this data, but if you would just go down to the next chart, I think the chart says a lot. This is weekly data that is updated for Du Bois County. And this is the number of positive cases. So we've big uptick and another big uptick this past week. Go to the next chart down. So when you look at our positives there in the blue, those are daily positives, and then you get the 7-day average. So that's positives as a percentage of those being tested. And I think it was reported that, we're over the 11%. What this does, and this is coming from the state, this is a leading indicator for hospitalizations, which might come 2 to 3 weeks down the road. And it's then an indicator of deaths. Now, this morning we reported 2 more deaths in Du Bois County. So 2 more citizens that were affected by this fatally. So we have our local justification to make such a move, and we're considering that next step. However, the governor has stepped in and mandated it across the state. There's a lot to be worked out. There's a lot of questions still out there, and that's why he's making it effective Monday. We can get things worked out. But I wanted to make sure you were aware of some of these trends, because some of this data just isn't shared very well, I don't think. You have to go search it. Go down to the next one more. This is the age distribution, if you look at that. And you'll see that 20 to 40 age group, 49, that's where the highest percentage of positive tests take place. However, it doesn't mean that they're the group that's going to be impacted when it comes to deaths. Usually they're healthier and can get through this, many of them without any symptoms. That's what's scary, because they don't see it as a risk, but they don't realize they could be carrying this virus to others that are susceptible. And so that's why the spread recently, and we've kind of identified there's been a few events that have taken place involving young people where a core group was exposed and they went and spread out, and it just becomes multiplied throughout the county as they go to their social events. We were ranked number 2 that week, this last week's data. We're number 1 now. It's not the number 1 we want to be. So when it comes to per capita incidents, Du Bois County ranks the worst in the state and has been nationally recognized as one of the hot zones. We've actually got some states mandating that people traveling to Indiana must isolate themselves for 14 days. That's not statistics we want. That is not the kind of thing that's going to help our industries, our tourism, our economy rebound. We've really got to get in front of it, and that's why I'm supporting the governor's move, and I think it's time we do this. But specifically in Du Bois County, we have to take that personal responsibility to protect others. Even though I might not feel sick, or I might feel like I've got sinuses because of the pollen and the allergies of this year, you can't take a chance. You can't take a chance of being an asymptomatic carrier of the virus to someone that is susceptible. And that's what this virus does. Now, you have to be exposed. What the masks do, my mask isn't protecting. If Renee would be here without a mask and coughing on me, my mask isn't going to protect me from that. Okay, the droplets, the moisture that comes out, could hit me. It's protecting Renee from mine, okay? When I wear a mask, I'm protecting others, and that's the really important thing everybody needs to get. It's not about me. Yeah, I feel like I could survive a case of this, but I might be a carrier, not know it, and pass it along to somebody that can't. And I don't want to be responsible for that. And I think if everyone in the county looked at it that way, and they executed this way, we could get our economy back. We could get people traveling here again. You know, our new hotels, what a bad time, right, to have a new hotel. Kevin, I don't know if you're still familiar with what tourism, but tourism has taken a plummet in the last several months. And it's predicted that many hotels are not going to survive. So, you know, we've got to do it for our local economy, and we've got to do it for our local citizens, for our friends and family. And that's the motivation that I have to get behind it. And I wanted you to be aware of some of this stuff. Let's see if there's another slide or not. You can see us down there. We're on that hot spot. Yeah. District 10, which is where we are. You know, we're it. We're the ones that you don't want to be. And it's going to take our adults intervening with our youth, because our youth are invulnerable. They're not going to recognize that risk because it's not going to bother them. But you know, we need to intervene. We need to really kind of get everyone on board on this. And that's what I'm asking. Let's all be proponents. Let's get through this, and let's get through it quickly so we can get back to a somewhat normal position. There have been some positive things lately. There's been some announcements about some immunizations that have been tested and are working. There's got some side effects, but you know, once they do prove them, they've got to get them into production, and they've got to go through distribution. I mean, we're months away from that. And inoculation, you know, to have those susceptible inoculated. So we're still many months away. And the best thing we can do is really adhere to safe social distancing, wearing a mask in public, and personal hygiene, washing your hands quite frequently. So I just wanted to bring that up, that the governor made the statement today in a press conference, and he'll be signing an executive order tomorrow to be effective on Monday. You may be questioned. You know, I have been questioned a lot in the last several days, believe me, because people knew we were considering something like this in the county. So if you have any questions, I try to answer them. But we're relying heavily, Du Bois County and the county government, the city governments have relied heavily on our Du Bois County Health Department, the Indiana State Department of Health, and the governor's direction, and they get a lot of that from the CDC guidelines. So we're not the experts on pandemics or epidemiology. We have to rely on those experts. And so that's where we're taking our direction right now. It's a serious situation, and there will be an opportunity. We're getting some more mask up, or don't enter a business establishment without a mask. Signage that will go out to our local, similar to what we had with the brochures that we did when we opened up. So, questions? We'll know what the enforcement's gonna be.
That's what I was gonna ask.
I think that's some of the stuff that has to be worked out. And I think Governor Holcomb made a statement today. Candy Neal asked the question, and Governor Holcomb made the statement that when we did the stay-at-home order, we weren't policing it. He asked Hoosiers to stay at home. We adhered to it for the most part. You know, maybe not everybody, but most of us did, and it made a difference. And that's the way we'd like to have this mandate. But there will be enforcement if needed. And I think they've talked about some various ways they might do that. Tough time. It's a tough time. And it's a time when, I'll be honest, I'm really proud of our city. And I'm proud of our city departments, because even during this time, we've continued to operate and get things done. And we've done it safely. We've done it without exposing groups of people. I think that's a hats off to all the department heads and Gail Canese and our safety to kind of lead that effort. I think they've done a great job. And even better, the projects are getting done. I can't wait. When Newton Street is finally done and painted, it'll be a great day. Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate any support you can provide in this. I know a lot of people are talking about their rights, but when it boils down to it, if there's a public health risk, you know, those rights are waived. You know, there's things you have to do. And that's why the county health department is involved. And that's why the state of Indiana is involved. So, with that, if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Paul to adjourn.
A second.
Second from Dave. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.